introduce Flona and my podcast. We're the Interdisciplinary History Podcast. We are a couple of students at MacEwan University, and we talk about history and the way it intersects with other disciplines.
Okay. Example, please.
One of our examples previously on our show was we had an episode about how the history of horror movies has been intersected with...
Yeah, so we're interdisciplinary history, so basically how do we connect to our understanding of the past through pop culture or through things that aren't just your history textbook is kind of our jam. So we looked at like the classic Universal Pictures monster movies.
Oh hey, we talked about them too.
Yeah. Your guys' episode was awesome, by the way. It was so cool that ours came out at the same time as that.
Yeah.
But we looked at them in the context of the decades they came out, and we talked about how there's this social concern with very visual, physical monsters contemporaneous to, like, the early eugenics movements, and, like, how do we consume that media when we take that context into effect or into account. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is you're just a bunch of smarty farties.
Oh.
You're basically talking through an essay? How is that not cool?
Yeah, and, like, we want to talk about, like, Inglorious Bastards and JoJo Rabbit tonight, which Red said that was cool, so I assume one of you guys are interested in that.
So
Go on.
I suggested to them all, and everybody on this show right now has watched both movies.
Awesome. Oh, we're gonna have a good chat, I think. I have some thoughts, and they are saucy.
Okay,
Sloan
I
has
am
heard
interested
my
in hearing.
rants. Sloan has heard my rants. My boyfriend has heard my rants. Yeah.
I'm curious, I guess, like, everybody on the channel, you've seen both movies. Like, not to make a lofty question, but how do you feel about them as a depiction of, like, World War II? You feel like they're neat, or do you feel like they're a bit strange?
If I can start, I
Absolutely.
definitely think that it's an interesting approach, obviously. I mean, most World War II media deliberately focuses on the Allies because, you know, you get to paint this whole heroic journey, this whole big, lofty, and we won kind of story. But stories that don't, that focus on people who are Nazis, I think is just as, if not more valuable than the war propaganda, because it's really easy to forget that the people who lived there were people living there and doing things. And if you make the other side in a war actual literal monsters, okay, it's easy to kill them at the time, but it's also very hard to recognize them if they ever turn up again.
Yeah.
Whereas everyone in these movies is a person, even if a lot of them are shitty people.
Yeah. Yeah. What you said about monsters, I think, is really relevant to, like, JoJo Rabbit, too. Because in interviews, one of the things that Taika Waititi said is he pointed out that, like, a lot of people on the far right, or a lot of white supremacists, do really like movies like Inglorious Bastards or American History X, because even though they're portrayed as villains, they're portrayed as very powerful and liking that image. So to do a satire like Jojo Rabbit takes away some of that power.
Yeah, and one of the things, I took some notes, and one of the things I think I thought about with the characters, actually, between Jojo Rabbit and Inglorious Bastards is Taika Waititi treats the characters in his film as people. Inglorious Bastards arguably does not. And why I say this is there's no depth, and specifically with the characters of Shoshana and the Bastards.
Yeah.
Right.
Even though the film is named after them, and they have an important role, we don't really get to see them. We don't know anything about them other than the fact that they want revenge.
Yeah.
And that's it. While with Jojo Rabbit, we know a lot about a lot of the characters based on their characterization and such. Elsa, for example, the character of Elsa, she has a lot of pain and anger, and that gets to be explored, while Shoshana, who was one of the characters I looked at the most while watching Inglorious Bastards, she didn't have that kind of development.
Yeah, I know. Inglorious Bastards is very much a vengeance quest, if not nothing more than that. As where Jojo Rabbit kind of like broke down the Nazi mental like view on everything else and like taking the piss on that, right? Like was very much like explaining Nazism and then destroying it at the same time.
I'm gonna jump in for a hot second if people don't mind. This is not the first like set of movies that has taken a wildly different approach to the depiction of Hitler and even the death of Hitler. You have some of Mel Brooks's depiction of Hitler with Springtime in Hitler and depicting him as sort of a, let's call it what it is, a fancy boy. Not only featuring him in a musical and featuring the Nazis as parading around showgirls, but on the flip side of that, you have your war movies of the time where they are, no, we're gonna win because we're the Allies. So this is just more of a modern take on that.
Yeah, I think that's very fair to say too. I love Mel Brooks' satire, and he does it so well. And I haven't seen satire like his in a long time. And then Jojo Rabbit just stuck out to me as one of the best examples of modern satire. I introduced Sloan specifically to Young Frankenstein, and he does a great satire of the Universal monster movies in that. And what I think is interesting is that with these satirical films, they actually give depths to the character that you don't really get to see in these action films.
For example, Shoshana, when she leaves at the very beginning in chapter 1, when the Nazis have invaded France that way and she is hiding from them, we don't really get to see what her life is like up until we meet her later in a different chapter. It gives her very little to work with as a character to derive from and pull from and maybe even sympathize for. Whereas in Jojo Rabbit, the girl that we meet there is very much a, oh no, she has witnessed the horrors of this war and she is done with the whole thing. Like even the watching a 10-year-old boy in front of her, I want to believe that not only does it strike her as odd for the first little bit, for the first couple minutes of their interaction, but it's a, oh, this is how far this actually goes. Like now you see the tree for all of the roots.
Again, like with Inglorious Bastards, again, it's a vengeance quest, right? So Shoshana's setup is the entire posse gets murdered by the Nazis and she escapes, right? So from there on, you should already know that she's going to be on a quest of revenge. I mean, the build up for that character is not really, again, Glorious Bastards is just, it's not really much more than just a vengeance quest. You're not going to get much more out of it. Like development there for sure is going to be pretty much stalled.
Yeah, and I think one of the issues that kind of arises from that is it's sort of, this is a period in history where you've got a group of people who are being systematically disenfranchised and systematically excluded, and then you're failing to humanize them in your storytelling.
Yeah, there was a review by Daniel Mendelsohn. He says, in Inglorious Bastards, Tarantino indulges his face for vengeful violence by, well, turning Jews into Nazis, unquote. And basically, when I watched it, I had a real issue with the fact that I thought it's great that they're giving a chance for people to get revenge, but they are not giving them development in that process of revenge.
Why the revenge? Any personal stakes for them, other than just it being the Great War, right? Like, what motivates the Inglorious Bastards just go about? Because they're kind of their quest, missions were kind of backhanded. They weren't really like official missions going down. They were just doing their own kind of thing. So I mean, like, what how did they get started? Why did they start this group? How did they band together? Like, there's no real backstory to any of them, right? Like as you said, and again, like the development is pretty much stalled.
Nothing there, and basically they give more screen time to Hans Landa over the Jewish characters who Tarantino said he wanted to see given more power. But to be given that power, you have to be given that screen time and that time for development, and you're not really seeing that in this film. Whereas with Jojo Rabbit, you're getting that time. From the beginning, all the characters have a personality, and there is this sense of empathy in the characters. Tarantino doesn't seem to have that, which
is very on brand for Tarantino.
Yeah.
Violence is his thing.
In an extreme way. There's one character, I do not remember his name, but in Inglorious Bastards, that it is a lead actor in Django Unchained.
Not Jamie Foxx, but the other. Yeah, you're talking about Christoph?
Not Samuel Jackson, because he is in both. That's not who I mean. But
Michael Fassbender.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, him playing both characters, and you can see, because Inglorious Bastards, I believe, came out first, if memory serves me correctly, and you can see how, like, just watching that actor portray that character in that specific way, when you flip it on its, not even just slide it over to the next slot when you're doing Django Unchained, he's a perfect fit that way, and just makes him an absolutely evil son of a bitch.
Oh, he's so evil in Django, and Michael Fassbender in general, he's very good at playing despicable characters.
Yes, he is.
One of the things Victoria said when we started, because obviously we rewatched both films recently, is it had been a while since both of us had seen Inglorious Bastards, and we didn't remember it being as problematic as it was when we actually went to watch it, because it seemed like it should be great. It's a Tarantino film about beating the Nazis. Like, that should be good, but it fails on a lot of the elements that that you just kind of need for storytelling and humanizing, and that's what beating the Nazis should actually represent, is humanizing a group that's being dehumanized.
On the opposite side of the coin, there is a certain people of number, like a certain people in this group that really doesn't need the humanizing. They were monsters from start to finish, and they need to be remembered that way.
This is also
absolutely
true.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think, like, with what Victoria says, like, the amount of screen time that's given to Christopher Waltz, whoever plays Hansel, he is given so much character development, but it's almost like by the end of the movie, he's won in a way. Like, yeah, he gets his face fucked up, but it's almost like he's portrayed as smart and clever and kind of has these positive attributes in that he sort of wins in the end, and that's really problematic.
It almost speaks on the actual fact, because after the war ended, a lot of Germans actually shipped over to the States and, played off as Americans and got away with it. So I mean, I can see that being a thing for this.
Yeah.
In fact, that is continued in the Amazon show called Hunters.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a fantastic show that I'm sure if these lovely ladies would like to return for maybe an episode on that someday.
Absolutely.
Oh, we would like that.
I can't really do gore movies, but I don't mind watching people explode by a bomb. I can't explain it either. I guess it's just the slow torture I can't take.
That's weird.
I think it really matters if the gore serves a purpose in the film or whether it's just there to make you uncomfortable to look at.
Yeah.
If there's a point, I can put up with a lot. If you're just trying to gross me out, I will easily be grossed out by removing someone's trachea through their ass. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
I'm with you on that. Exactly. I'm with you on that. Jeez, have you seen Lovecraft Country? Because
no, that's my next one, actually.
I haven't.
Stuff like that will happen in Lovecraft Country. Just letting you know.
I'll have to watch it then.
Yeah.
Well, for me, like, I just, because I was told to watch JoJo Rabbit, so I was just like, okay, I've heard of it, never really watched it, so I did give it a sit down. I think it was Thursday I watched it. It's amazing to see, the brainwashing, right? To see this little boy really believe movement's a real good thing, and spew that hate, and then not anymore. Like, he kind of grew, and you know what I mean? Like, it like, again, like you said, like, the human piece of it was cared between the two, Elsa and JoJo, right? Like, they was pretty much cared between the two. And, like, spoiler alert for anybody listening who hasn't seen the film, but, like, shocker, when they, the Nazi soldiers approached their house and they're investigating, and Elsa came out as JoJo's deceased sister, and then later on, literally, he's walking through town and you find his mom hung. Like, that came out, like, for me, that was shocking. Like, it shocked me out of nowhere, because I wasn't really expecting that to happen right then and there. And just the scenery was spoken a whole lot. Like, you just saw her feet, and you already knew, because they focus a whole lot on her shoes.
They do, yeah.
And it's almost, that moment is almost the most real moment of violence too, because, like, it is a violent movie, but it's very cartoonish in its violence. Like, when the kid is, like, almost blown up at the beginning of the movie, and like, kind of the melee bedlam fight scene at the end, those are so hyper violent, but they're so cartoonized. That hanging scene is kind of the most real violent event, even though it happens off screen and you're just left with the aftermath.
Like, I was completely sitting there, like jaw dropped, like, in shock, like, wow, they just took this guy's, the only person he had left in his world, and she's gone. And that's crazy, man.
Especially too with, like, what is it? With his best friend,
Yorkie.
Yeah, Yorkie. Like, that kid, like, the fourth wall broke it. And it's like, I just can't die. And it was like, it literally hit me too. And I was like, this kid really can't. Like,
Yorkie's the best.
This kid, I don't know how they wrote him, but it was so well done. And just like the factor of, like, like little things that were happening, of course, with every other, like, character that was either dying or, like, saving JoJo himself. But Yorkie's the one who's, like, the immortal per se character. And they're like,
the very end, where Rebel Wilson hands him a Glock and tells him to go fight, and everything explodes. And the next scene, this guy's sitting in a hole covering his ears. I'm like, how did this guy escape that?
Like, that's what I was wondering. I was like, I thought you died.
Well,
Yeah.
Mad love to Yorkie. Yorkie was the best.
You're so good.
still on that hanging scene, just because I have something else to say about it. It's just kind of relates to how we were talking about gore earlier. They don't show us more than's necessary, but they also show us very firmly how JoJo's seeing it. The shoes are at eye level. The shoes were a personal connection to his mom. They were a big part of how he saw her.
Yeah.
So we're seeing her death not just as and she was hung or hanged for being a sympathizer, but this is how JoJo perceives his dead mother.
Yeah. Something that I think was interesting that the director said about this film is when he made the choice to only show the shoes, he said that it's a really, and he used the word intimate, the intimate moment of the child and the mother's body. And he said that the audience doesn't get to be privy to that, like him seeing all of her. So he just showed the shoes as enough to tell the audience what happened without interrupting that moment.
Yeah. It was really powerful, man. Like it got me really good.
And it was an interesting aspect too of like, because I had seen it first, but like I missed just like around that section the first time. But when you see the hint towards it of like as the movie progresses, so like from I guess the first initial people that were hanged per se, and you just see the feet. But as he brings JoJo back to look and is like, he's questioning why this happened, and it's like, they did what they could, and you see the story progress of what she was doing.
Mm-hmm.
It was like it already hinted to like, okay, she's doing the best she can with the other kid that's in the house, but because of that result, she did the best she could, and she got, of course, killed for that.
This is what we call foreshadowing. Yeah.
It's also interesting that they bring back the shoe motif towards the end when he and Elsa are just about to go out into free Germany and he ties her shoes. I think it shows immaturity and growing up because before he doesn't know how to tie his shoes, and when he sees his mother, that's his moment of maturity.
Yeah.
And then afterwards he can tie his shoes. And that moment, I was like, that stuck out to me the most. But also, I work at a shoe shop, and it's pretty normal for 10-year-olds not to know how to tie their shoes. Just saying. So I thought, wow, yeah, that's a moment of maturity.
He grew. Progression. That's right.
Yeah.
Also, just second carrying of that symbolism of intimacy. If it was intimate with his mom, if it was joy with his mom, and then grief with her later, now it's some sort of familial bond again.
We were talking earlier about propaganda and how it's kind of portrayed, and I think both of these films show very real depictions of propaganda. But what I will say is Tarantino shows a very vile propaganda being taken very seriously. And then the brainwashing that's kind of shown in Jojo Rabbit, I think really does a good job of reminding the audience how ridiculous the beliefs. Seeing propaganda repeated through the eyes of a 10-year-old and it all be taken so literally, I think really reminds the audience that these are ridiculous ideas and that it's childish to think in such black and white terms.
And I think it also shows just how terrifying, and how easy it is to be controlled by propaganda. When I went to Berlin, there's a museum there, and I highly recommend anyone who is a fan of history and is interested in this sort of moment to go there. It's called the Totality of Terror Museum.
Okay.
And it's built right actually over top of the former SS headquarters, which is scary. Yeah, it's right over top of the torture chambers. You can look into it. It's terrifying, but it shows the progression of how propaganda was used to brainwash an entire generation of people into believing awful, awful ideals. And it's insane. And I highly recommend that people go there. It is...
When the world clears up from the Backstreet Boy concert, of course.
That's an interesting point about the way you phrase that, brainwashed a generation. Because a lot of the mechanisms for the dissemination of Nazi propaganda was mostly just an education system that was semi-functional and a really fucked up curriculum. And yeah, sure, it became mandatory to be in the worst version of the Boy Scouts you've ever heard of, but the mechanisms for this indoctrination aren't anything, terrifying and out of left field. Have you ever been to a Boy Scouts summer jamboree where you get all the troops together or whatever? It looks a hell of a lot like the that weird camp in Jojo Rabbit, because That's really what it was.
So it's not surprising that it's familiar, because around the time that Hitler Youth emerges at the same time as the Boy Scouts movement. And then there was also the Soviet, they usually get translated as pilgrims, but it's the same thing. Like, there's this movement for industrialization has happened. We should teach boys how to be boys in the forest again. Like, it's this, it comes at the same time as there's concerns about health. World War I has ended, so there's concerns about how do we make
feed ourselves
the men
and
in
put
our
room
cities.
over our heads.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But the scouting movement in the US and Great Britain, the US is being a off track of Great Britain, it all emerges around the same time, and it's emerging contemporaneously to the rise in public education and the rise of the welfare state, interestingly enough.
Yeah, it's some greater power taking interest in the lives of your kids. That's technically a welfare state thing, even if it's definitely not what we associate with it these days.
No.
That would also inevitably lead to the American South indoctrinating its children for the wrong version of history that actually happened down there when it came to the Civil War.
Let's
Well,
not talk about that.
yeah.
Man.
That's how far I wanted to take that thought.
Yeah.
So I'm only going to take it one step further and tell you that, like, the Nazis studied the American South and their models of segregation. That is a part of the legal history that leads to the development of the Nuremberg laws. Like, you can go back through the records and see what would become Nazi Germany, looking at the American South as a model to build off of.
That's a whole yikes if you want to put it in the terms of this industry.
Yeah. Those guys were efficient with cruelty, man. It's not a joke.
There was a talk done at McEwen where they talked about how concentration camps held by the British during the Boer War. They
invented the concentration camp,
Yeah, the concentration camps in Germany.
If you look at it, a lot of the cruelest Nazi policies were things they pulled from other places. I mean, the South's segregation, concentration camps from the Boer War, and of course, can't forget Alberta's eugenics programs.
No, you cannot.
Ooh.
They didn't just pull this stuff out of nowhere. They looked at other people with similar beliefs and just put it all together.
So remember how I said the South to the Nazis was the huge yikes? Yeah, I'm going to roll that back and say that's a small yikes. This is a big yikes.
If any of the listeners, and like maybe this is where we get, too hoity-toity academic, Aidan Forth would be a really good person to read if you're interested in the Boer War. He's got kind of the seminal book out right now. I don't remember the title of it, but
nice. So you see now this makes me raise a question, right? Because now we're going back to Tarantino work, okay? And then we can compare a lot of this stuff to what was going on, 500 years prior down South America, right? And this is where we get Django Unchained. And again, Django's very much just a vengeance quest, right? Like in that,
with the bomb soundtrack.
Right, yeah, but do we get any growth out of that film as well? Or do we just get a vengeance quest, right?
Well, it was a vengeance and a rescue quest at the same time, right?
Yeah.
It's like
and
he's
one part love story.
Exactly. Because he's essentially going back, he's going for vengeance of what's been happening or what was done to him, but he's also, as Red mentioned, it is part of a love story and a rescue quest of like looking for the one that he's mostly connected with as well.
My question is growth, however. Other than learning how to shoot men down, was there really much else to it?
I think it's important. Look, we've got a lot of white people vengeance quests over stupid shit, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's important that not only do we get, people of color in vengeance quest stories, because every time you add some sort of diversity, you get to tell a story again because it becomes worthwhile again. But also the fact that he's acting against the entirety of the country he lives in while doing so. Mm-hmm. Like, it's personal. It's deeply, deeply personal because this is his suffering. This is his love. This is his passion. But it's really easy to look at the history of the American South and reduce the people who suffered under slavery to props in the narrative, They lived, they worked, they died. It was shitty. This is a person who refused to take part in that narrative. And that's important.
I like that you're bringing up, like, what do we get out of this? Because that's sort of what Vic and I are interested in is, this is historical fiction. What does it represent to the audience? And I think...
go ahead. Sorry.
I think the problem with a lot of Tarantino's films is he likes to do a counter-historical narrative. But it's almost like he, as a director, feels like he's doing some virtue by saving somebody who doesn't get saved in real life.
Right.
I'm saying that for Inglorious Bastards, like killing Hitler in a way that Hitler didn't die. But also Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is him taking, the murder of an actress and turning it into, well, I could invent characters who would save her instead.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where my thing is, like, because you're getting, like, if you sit down and watch, like, 12 Years a Slave, right, you're getting, like, like a historical journal, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're getting something out of that. There's a whole story there. And again, you know what I mean? Like, so is Tarantino's just stuff, like, is it just all gonna be, is it just only veggies that he really knows and there's no real development to anything else? Because, I mean, as on a personal note, I really do like Django Unchained because I'm getting a black lead, but at the same time, what's the movie really doing for me other than just letting me shoot white guys through a fantasy game, right? It's not really much else there to it.
I'll just be glad that Quentin Tarantino's foot fetish didn't feature prominently in that film. So yeah, Vengeance Quest and his foot fetish, that's usually what Tarantino does. All right, anyway, Nazis.
Yeah.
Propaganda, yeah.
The interpretation, listen, hard segue, and I'm sorry now. Okay? The interpretation of, like, actual Hitler's death in both movies is bonkers.
Well,
watching
okay.
Taika Waititi, sorry, I mispronounced his name.
Taika Waititi.
Correct. There's lots of consonants, I'm sorry. Taika Waititi's walking into that young man's bedroom with the hole in his head from where he shot himself. Yeah, when I saw that, it was...
Yeah, I mean, it's too bad you didn't see him actually do it, but you get the news of him doing it regardless, and then to imagine him, come in his room and get a karate kick from a little child out the window.
Yeah,
right.
And remembering that it takes place in the child's imagination, I don't think it's strange that the child has heard it's already happened, so he's imagining the aftermath rather than the event.
Yeah,
exactly.
For sure. And then we cross the street to Inglorious Bastards, and we just watch Adolf Hitler get absolutely peppered with bullets.
Swiss cheesed, man.
Yo.
He is just turned into a sack of flesh.
Unrecognizable flesh.
My guy
Just flesh.
my dude got the cheese grater. That's what he got.
The dude's fit only for the sausage press.
Jeez.
Cranking.
But no, the difference there, even just in the number of shots, in my opinion, is really important because in Jojo Rabbit, it's functionally just quick and over. He's dead now. That's that. Where Inglorious Bastards, much like most of the film, that's a power fantasy.
Yeah.
That's what Tarantino wanted us to see. It was him ripped apart the way a lot of people wanted to do, which, totally fair.
They shot this guy like he was, like, they missed a spot. Like, they were not going to let up.
Oh, jeez.
I agree that Tarantino really wants you to see that. But I would also argue that Taika Waititi really wants you to see the younger generation of Germany kicking Hitler to the side.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Quite literally. Like that young man sent fucking Hitler down the pit of Sparta. Like.
Yeah. Like, I think it's more important to show a younger German rejecting Hitler than it is to just show the Allies Swiss cheesing Hitler.
Yeah, because he's kicking away his bigotry.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
With the old and the new.
This is Sparta, like.
But no, it's like the more you guys have talked today, the more I kind of get that feeling that Inglorious Bastards is enjoyable, but it's a popcorn movie,
Absolutely.
You watch, you're done. Yeah. And the more you think about it, the hollower it feels.
Right.
Where
you don't even have to look at that far.
So much going on.
Yeah.
Even though we're all adults and we all get that it's a movie, it's not real life, I think that an audience gets more and gets a better kind of pop culture understanding of World War II from something like Jojo Rabbit than the audience does from something like Inglorious Bastards.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah,
I would agree wholeheartedly.
There's two sets of viewers, right? You have ones who want depth and you have ones who just want filler.
Mm-hmm.
And so those will gravitate to Inglorious Bastards for filler because, it does what it does for them, right? Dudes, guns, things blow up, vengeance, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And you can have all of those elements without taking something as important to understand as World War II is. And that, I think, is my biggest problem, is it's just an action movie. You didn't have to make it about World War II. Whereas Jojo Rabbit is about propaganda and is about World War
World
II.
War II. That's exactly it.
And
Yeah.
and especially with the factor too of like seeing it from, I guess, the other side of, you know, the Germans themselves, but you see it from a kid's perspective as well, let alone it being obviously comedic factor because of how the director approaches it, but like you see it from the other side of the playing field. It's like, oh, this is how they were in a sense indoctrinated, or in a sense like brainwashed, and this is how they kind of were going through it at that time. But then you see the change of JoJo himself, like as we said before, he's maturing from that, and then he's understanding, oh, not everything is actually like this. This world is actually more different than I should be expecting it to be, or how it's taught.
Yeah, there's a lot more to people than you think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's not one structured way.
Thanks, ladies. I used to like this movie.
You can still enjoy it.
You're
Just
welcome.
remember this a
No.
little
No problem. Anytime. I'm glad to ruin a movie anytime.
No, it's one of those films I've always had that same feeling with. Like it's always been enjoyable to watch for what it is, right? Like I'm just there to watch situations go down. I do like both kind of sets of movies, right? I don't mind the mindless filler because it's just there to do its job, and I do enjoy a good story that's got something way deeper, ingrained in it, because that's what it's for. So in both respects, both movies are good for what they do. When it comes out to being better, I mean, Jojo Rabbit actually had a message in it. So I mean,
And listen, for extra points for putting Scarlett Johansson in a role she actually does well in.
the cast was fantastic in that whole movie. Sam Rockwell was great.
He was awesome.
He was great. I can't remember his name, but he was Theon, Game of Thrones, and he was great too for his little role that he had.
He has this wonderful, like, I've seen it described. He has a face that just screams, "I need my father to solve my problems for me."
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And that carries
He's so
on.
wide. Yeah, he's so wide-eyed.
The fact that they
Settling kind of got those fish eyes that stick out at you.
Yeah.
The
Like,
fact that
I know
they
he's a great person, but he scares me. Like just when he looks.
Perpetual worry on his face all the time.
Thomasine Mackenzie as Elsa, I think she is awesome.
She was fantastic the whole way through.
if I searched her up right now, I probably would go through her filmography. I just want to see her do more things.
It was fantastic, man.
I think she's gonna do really good stuff. I do know she was in The King with Timothée Chalamet. Oh, that one. I watched that one just as I was doing a medieval history course. Let me tell you, what excellent side material that was. Just, oh.
What was JoJo's name? Who's the actor? Little guy.
Let me just see. Roman Griffin Davis.
Okay, that little kid's fantastic too. So let's get more of him as well.
Oh, he's great. I thought all the child actors in this
Yeah.
movie were really good. Like, I didn't see anyone that I was like, oh, these are glaringly bad
Yeah.
children actors. Like,
The
these were...
children are very believable.
I'll still stand it by it, but Yorkie for A1 acting.
Yo, Yorkie for Oscar, let's go.
Yeah.
For real.
Hashtag Yorkie for Oscar.
Yorkie was the best, man.
Man, he's no, like, the funny thing too, like, just a quick side note, but like, of what is it? I think the best friend scenario when they were like in the camp area, right? And then JoJo was just like, yeah, you're like the second best friend. Yeah, unless you're like, an adult man in a fat kid's body, then it's fine to be second place. And it's like, no, I guess I'm a kid on a fat kid's body. And I was like, good God, like, this kid. Like, don't hurt yourself this much, Jesus.
The dialogue between the kids, it actually sounds like children talking and not like adults speaking for children. If you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it was
Right,
beautiful.
no,
Like, it was executed
exactly.
accurately.
You can tell that, like, Taika talked to these children, got a, like, sense of how exactly they speak.
Yeah,
And
you
then-
couldn't hear the old man behind the words.
Yeah.
He's also a parent with kids this age, though, so it's not shocking that he was a bit better at capturing that.
Right.
Blessed Taika, you have a very imaginable mind, and keep using it, man, because there's fun stuff coming out of you. So
Listen,
Awesome.
I will
Yeah.
not be the last one to say it, and I definitely am not the first one, but Taika for Star Wars, dude.
I swear he already signed on to do something now. I think before he kind of
He's,
and he's kind of like in it now.
Well, he's written a couple episodes of The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And he voiced in one of them because that's a thing he does. He likes being CGI characters.
Yeah.
And
Or now have my interest. Okay.
So to jump into these two movies on how they portray their female characters is awesome and also very problematic. So
Go
on the one hand, you've got Jojo Rabbit, where you've got Scarlett Johansson's character, you've got Rebel Wilson's character, like being human, and Rebel Wilson just eating up the scenery no matter what scene she's in,
Right.
as she is known to do, coming from Pitch Perfect fame. And across the street, you've got our spy characters, our the Shoshana. You've got very stern, very characterized interpretations.
One of my major things I discussed with Sloan was how much I wish we had more of Shoshana.
Correct.
Because she was one of my favorite characters in the entire film.
She's almost the only character in the entire film.
She's just shy of a sexy lamp, though. Let's be real.
Yeah, I
she's
agree.
human furniture. Like, she's a plot device more than she is a person.
She is
Unfucking fortunately.
Yeah.
She's a sexy Swiss Army knife, if you will. Like, she has a function, but so she's more than a lamp, but like you could definitely replace her with damn near anything.
See, I thought that out of all the characters, Shoshana could have been the most compelling.
Yeah, they just
but
wrote
they
her
did
off.
nothing with her.
Yeah, they just wrote her off as cold, and that's it.
Yeah, and I really, like, from the beginning, I was like, I would really love to see her end up killing Hans Landa.
It would have been better.
That would be the ultimate revenge.
Yeah, it would have been better if we had Shoshana on a whole revenge quest, right?
It
But
really
you see,
would have.
But you see, that would be character development.
Yeah, and Tarantino doesn't have that. No.
That was just really
I don't
writing.
know. Well, so there's a degree to which that when Shoshana lights the theater on fire, it's kind of like Indiana Jones's presence in the entire first Indiana Jones movie. Like, even if Shoshana hadn't lit the fire, Brad Pitt and his buds still would have shown up. They still would have shot everybody.
Yeah.
So all she really does is make the shooting scene more exciting and more cinematic. But because the bastards show up, she's not even, like, I don't want to say she's robbed of her revenge, but in a way she kind of is.
Yeah.
Like, she becomes inconsequential to the end of the movie, to the deaths. Her plan didn't really matter.
Like, for me, like, my headcanon wise, this movie would have been a lot better if. Hear me out. I don't know if any of you have witnessed Samurai Champloo, but like, you have someone in search of someone, and you come across these, these two dudes who seem to be really good at using swords, so you kind of hire them to do the work with you, right? Here it is. Shoshana should have been able to bump into the Inglorious Bastards, have a common goal, go about their business, right? Instead, we get something completely different.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Yeah.
It'd have been a little bit more cool. Like, I don't know. Again, we like fluidity around here. So for me, a movie like that just kind of seems like it was almost written to be that way. And for some reason, this looks like there's like two ideas in one movie, and it didn't work out.
Right. And if to play off of that little bit of fluidity, the way the camera angles and the actual cinematography of Inglorious Bastards is fluid, whereas Jojo Rabbit is, I think the word I want to use is like almost staccato.
It's very it's very differently paced, very surreal in some ways.
Right, it's jump cut, like 5 or 6 right in one go, and then we get a long shot. Whereas Inglorious Bastards, like, you can, it's almost your standard filmmaking, where it's some long shots, some mid shots, some just headshots, like. And it's expected that way, whereas Jojo Rabbit decides to throw it out the freaking window along with Hitler himself. Like,
karate kick standard filmmaking practices.
That little kid kicked the shit out of him, man.
The thing is, it
was
works
great.
really, really well.
Yeah.
Like, the opening sequence alone, just when they've got the Beatles song going on in German over top, and you get the archival footage and JoJo going to camp, it's really well done. It just shows how absolutely bonkers the story is already. It sets it up really well. I like that scene for the pacing that they used.
Yeah. Well, here it is. You can see clearly two different visions from two different filmmakers. You have one who has one idea of how it should look, and one has an idea of how it should be. Taika's just a very artistic guy who knows what he's doing. He knows how to humanize even pieces of shit. Right? Like Sam Rockwell's German officer, like, clearly could have ratted out the children at that point where he asked for the birthday and everything. Yeah, he let the children live and took it out on the mom. Right? So I mean, like, he had a bit of heart to him too, even though he's a Nazi piece of shit. That's a concern for the child. So
I think his character also kind of embodies the, like, fear-based complacency that I think we do have to remember was very emblematic. Is, even though 90% of Germans were party members, it wasn't necessarily that they ascribed to the belief system. It was just dangerous to not outwardly say you ascribe to the belief system.
Yeah.
And I think his actions ultimately at the end kind of place him in that camp.
Yeah, Nazi Germany is a very dangerous place where you have to drink the Kool-Aid or else, right?
Nice.
Beastie, if you could.
Beastie, if you please.
Jeez.
That was not his thing.
You know what? That's okay. But nonetheless,
Work in progress.
that brings us to our historic adventure into this discussion. But you can also find us on our socials, which is our Twitter is at Crusade Nerd, our Instagram is at Nerd Crusade, and we upload every Wednesday to YouTube, and you can download any previous episodes or listen on your mobile device to the Anchor.fm website or wherever podcasts are found by searching Nerd Crusade. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, go ahead and button mash a thumbs up. If you want to swing by when we have a new video, web up the sub button. Oh, and while you're at it, hit the bell to be notified by...